Flying combat brings a whole new perspective to battle in Flyff. Soaring through the sky to take on foes with unique rewards has been one of the foundational flying features that gives Fly for Fun its name. Hey everyone, I'm Blukey, and today we'll be taking a look at flying combat and the changes we can expect to the system in Flyff Universe. At level 20, players get to experience the joy of flight for the first time. Players hop on a board and suddenly have access to travel around the open world with few limits. Travel to other islands becomes trivial, and exploration to content far above the player's level can be achieved without penalty. Open exploration of the world creates unique opportunities from the developers to create interest and mystique in showing what's to come as the player progresses. Flying unlocks freedom in the form of exploration and convenience in the ability to travel quickly, but with the introduction of flying combat, flying also provides new challenges for the player to overcome. 3 core flying monsters make up the experience of player versus environment in Flyff PC. The first flying monsters that the players are likely to encounter are the moth bees, found floating above Saint Morning. Once players progress beyond Saint Morning, flibbergans can be found on the way to the Garden of Rices. The final flying monsters in the game are the rockapellers, who are seen flying between Flaris and Darkon 1. Flying monsters are often part of the player's tourist experience. Most players may have seen these monsters flying about during their journey, but have little reason to interact with them. The flying combat in Flyff PC leaves many features desired by players, making it difficult to even take on the airborne masker pets. Auto attacks don't work in the sky, so players are required to repeatedly left-click their target to deal damage. Some classes like acrobats are unable to use their ranged weapons properly in the air, meaning they'll need to get up close and personal to fight. Many skills and builds are also ineffective in the sky, such as area of effect builds that players have adapted to using on the ground. The small number of flying monsters along with the lack of full combat system support in Flyff PC means most players never actually interact with the flying combat system. A fun distraction for a few players, but many elegant, intuitive changes to the flying combat system are needed to shepherd broader appeal to the player base. Flyff Universe ushers in the overhaul of flying combat, completely changing how players interact with monsters in the air. Many of the features lacking in the previous iterations of the game have been developed to provide a full flying combat system. When double-clicking a flying monster, players now fly directly to the monster, whereas previously they were required to fly to a targeted monster themselves. In addition, when a player reaches their target, they will stop and attack, rather than continuously spin around the enemy. Players can now enjoy the full range of motion of their class with attack animations now working as expected. Even more exciting will be the ability to properly use area of effect attacks, making farming the flying masker pets more efficient than ever. Additional quality of life changes have been made to flying encounters to make the entire experience more enjoyable for the player. For instance, pickup pets can now be used while flying. When defeating flying enemies, any pinyo or items go directly into a player's inventory. However, with pickup pet drop filters, players can leave behind rewards they don't need in the air. All of these changes in mind, will flying encounters be rewarding enough to entice players into participating? To achieve a state where players willingly participate in flying combat, the experience needs to be rewarding enough for players to choose farming flying masker pets over those on land. The combat improvements brought into Flyff Universe lower the barrier to entry by making flying combat easier and more accessible for numerous classes and player archetypes. Making the flying combat experience more accessible creates a space where players are more likely to try this part of the game that had traditionally been ignored. As an aside, while filming the footage for this video in Flyff PC, it was extremely difficult to find any flying monsters at all. With the help from a kind player, I was able to find and fight a few moth bees in Saint Morning, but I was unable to find a single Flybrigand or Rockefeller during my entire journey. The lack of presence from these masker pets and the little change in the combat system over the years reveals how little focus flying combat has had in the spotlight from the developers. I look forward to these changes in both the combat system and the spawn size of these creatures in Flyff Universe. Driving players to experience flying combat is the first step in forging the feature as a core part of the player experience, but keeping players motivated to continue grinding in the sky is another avenue that must be explored altogether. As far as we know, the experience points granted by flying monsters are not so rewarding in either version of Flyff that a given player would choose to fight them instead of leveling at traditional land locations. That leaves item rewards as the main motivation for players to take to the sky. Flyff PC gave players opportunity to obtain basic versions of defense jewelry known as plugs from any masker pets above level 15. However, better versions of plugs were available to drop from the flying monster's Rockapellers. Allowing better versions of plugs to drop from Rockapellers gave that monster a reason to be farmed. The other flying masker pets really had little reason to be noticed. Flyff Universe brings ubiquity of plugs to all flying monsters. Ground monsters no longer drop any version of plug jewelry, giving flying monsters a reason to be sought out. With more reason to seek out flying combat, Flyff Universe brings all new flying monsters to the skies of Madrigal. That means more opportunities and incentives to take to the sky and participate in flying combat at later levels. Farming plug earrings at Rockapellers years ago is a nostalgic memory, but one of grinding out relatively painful monsters in a broken combat system. I'm thrilled to see the changes of flying combat and flying masker pets in Flyff Universe. Thank you to everyone watching this far. I enjoyed discussing the niche experience of flying combat in Flyff and diving into how we can expect that experience to evolve in Flyff Universe. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe so I know you're enjoying the content. Leave a comment below with other Flyff topics you want to hear about, and it might just become a future video.